I think in our society, you need to be a balanced person. You have to balance two things. There are two important things in our life. One is balancing yourself and balancing others. But the topic given to me is something similar but different, So it's balancing the body. So which is a very common problem we see in our practice. It's such a common situation that and out of 50 to 50 patients in the clinic, I think more than half has experienced dizziness one day. So, general practitioner is important in the society because he has the first contact with the patient. So therefore, it is very important that general practitioner know this important area because it's such a common situation. And dizziness, the patient refer various names to identify this dizzy condition. They call it vertigo, imbalance, unsteadiness, giddiness, sense of strangeness, lightheadedness, and faintness. They all are more or less similar situation, but giddiness and dizziness are the layman terms. But most dizzy patients can be placed into one of four categories. One is vertigo. Vertigo is a vestibular situation. Vertigo is a symptom of vestibular system. Faintness is a symptom of hemodynamic system. Unsteadiness is a symptom of cerebellar system. Lightheadedness is a symptom of neurotic condition. So what is lightheadedness? It's a vague symptom, so we call it neurotic, associated with emotional stress, fever and the tension. Usually seen in psychiatric disorders, hyperventilation and encephalopathies. Faintishness or the presyncope, a transient sensation of faint, hemodynamic factors causing brain ischemia can cause it, and there are changes in the cardiac rhythm. And also factors impairing venous return to the heart. May present with nausea, weakness, shortness of breath and change in vision. Unsteadiness is a sensation of imbalance when standing or walking. So usually occurs during ambulation. So that's different from other three. So no sense of faintness, and it's due to cerebellar incoordination. So what is vertigo? Vertigo is something different from those what we described. Vertigo is sort of a sensation of rotation without loss of consciousness. Patient feels some sort of hallucination or illusion of movement. So vertigo has definite element of rotation, either himself or the surrounding. So usually associated with cochlear symptoms such as deafness and the tinnitus. So to know about this balancing disorder, I think we need to know a little bit of balancing system in the body. How do we maintain the balance? There is visual input, which is important, proprioceptual input, and vestibular input. All these three together maintain our balance. So without visual input, you cannot maintain our balance, body balance. Yeah, such as vestibular, there is a vestibular input as well, and proprioceptual input. These are the three important factors governing the balance of the body. The balancing system is divided into three parts: vestibular system, vision and the proprioceptors, as I said earlier. Again, the vestibular system could be peripheral or the central. Peripheral vestibular system and the central vestibular system. Since I am given only 30 minutes, I think I'm just I got so many slides, so I will just go through it. So, vestibular system has three parts. Again, the vestibular end organ. Vestibular end organ, semicircular canal, we all know, vertical and the sacral. Vestibular end organ tell the brain which way the head moves without looking. And these are the parts of the vestibular end organ, semicircular canal, vertical and the sacral. So the incidence of the vertigo is usually symptom of age. Everybody at one stage feel this disease spell. It's very common in elderly. After about 45-50, everybody has experienced this symptom called vertigo. With the aging, more and more people feel vertigo. Usually it's common in female than in male in Sri Lanka. So what are the precipitating factors? There are so many in our society. And food can cause it. Certain foods can precipitate the vertiginous attack. Head movements, mental stress, temperature changes, tiredness, drugs, they all are contributing factors precipitating vertigo. What sort of food can cause it? Commonly we know bananas, green grams, kiribat, acharu, alcohol, coffee, pineapple. Those are common offenders in our food. Then precipitating head movement, rolling over the bed, bending, looking up and down, turning left and right, tying the mosquito, and even straining during the toiletry can precipitate vertiginous attack. Mental stress, emotion, accident, funeral, sexual act, and all these things in children, examination, fear of examination can precipitate vertiginous attack. Cold water bath, swimming, night bath, evening bath, early morning bath can precipitate vertiginous attack. And tiredness, breaking rest at night, long journey, air travel, those are the other factors causing vertigo. These are predisposive factors. There are so many, as I said, starting from food to tiredness, head movements, they all are very important. This is where the general practitioner in his history should note down what sort of precipitating factors can cause it. When it comes to clinical features, there are three important factors. One is vertigo. So in vertigo, you need to ask about the type of vertigo, whether it is a true vertigo or if it is true, it has to be either continuous or episodic. We must note down whether the type of vertigo is continuous or the episodic, whether it is short story or the long story, onset, gradual onset or the sudden onset, and direction. And there are other aggravating factors, relieving factors, and accompaniment. Those are the things which should be noted in the history. And also, if it is episodic, lasting for seconds or hours. If it is prolonged, it could be even weeks. Then associated deafness, whether it is sensorineural or neural. It could be unilateral or the bilateral. These are the clinical features we should note down. The tinnitus, what type of tinnitus or the duration. So, now we move on to the causes of vertigo. It's very easy to remember the causes of vertigo if you know this. V stand for vascular, E stand for epilepsy, R stand for treatment. Vascular, under the vascular, there are so many vascular conditions starting from migraine to stroke and vestibular insufficiency, vasculitis, Meniere's syndrome. Those are all vascular conditions which giving rise to vertigo. And epilepsy, vertiginous epilepsy. And certain medications starting from anti-malarial, analgesics, antihypertensive, cardiacs, they all can cause vertigo. Tumors, acoustic neuroma, CP angle tumors, cervical vertigo, thyroid function diseases can cause vertiginous attack. Infections such as labyrinthitis, vestibular neuronitis, idiopathic and cerebral infection can cause vertigo. G stands for glial disease, that is multiple sclerosis. O stands for ocular. So vertigo is easy to remember. V for vascular, E for epilepsy, R for treatment, T for tumor, I for infection, G for glial disease, O for ocular. So how to evaluate dissipation clinically? So as you know, there are a few factors involving producing vertigo: labyrinth, cerebellum, vestibular nerve, brain, vestibular nuclei. In other words, peripheral vestibular system, central vestibular system. These are the system involving maintaining the balance. So in a clinical examination, clinical evaluation, history, as I said earlier, is important. Then ENT examination, central nervous system examination, which include cranial nerve, nystagmus, cerebellar test, posture, cerebrovascular system, pulse and BP. And there are key points in the history which should be noted. The vertigo true. Is true vertigo present? Are there associated neurological symptoms? What is the pattern of the onset? Is it sudden or acute onset or the gradual? What is the duration? Long duration, short duration? Have there been auditory symptoms such as tinnitus or the deafness? Are there other associated symptoms? Vomiting, headaches and neurological symptoms? What medication has the patient been taking? What is the patient's past medical history, whether associated with hypertension and other diseases? Any recent or remote head injury or neck injury? Clinical evaluation include clinical hearing testing, audiological testing, vestibular testing, radiological testing, and the hematological testing. Of course, you have to examine the nystagmus also. Nystagmus is a sign. It's a jerky movement of the eye. There are two components. One is slow component toward the lesion. The other one is fast component toward the opposite side. It can be pendular or in a case of non-vestibular. In a vestibular nystagmus, usually spontaneous, and positional and induced. Non-vestibular, ocular, toxic and congenital. Those are the situations where I get this nystagmus. Nystagmus again going to be central and the peripheral. Peripheral ones are due to the ear, central ones are due to the central nervous system. You all know this clinical hearing testing, Weber and the Rines, and those things also need to be done to establish whether there is a sensory neural hearing test. Then audiological investigations are available in the hospital, but these are now available even in the general, available for general practitioners in most of the optician, with the most of the optician. They are audiogram, tympanogram, and even brainstem audiogram. This is a picture of PO2 audiogram, which will show the threshold of hearing or severity of deafness. Again, there are vestibular tests, positional tests, caloric test, rotational test, electronystagmography. Those are again available in the hospital and the certain opticians. Just to tell you about some maneuvering, Dick-Hallpike maneuver is to establish the diagnosis of positional vertigo. When you do a Hallpike maneuver, patient come out with nystagmus. It's provocative head position. When you do a provocative head position, patient present with nystagmus with a brief latency period. And it's a short duration. I'll show you some picture how this is called positioning test of the Hallpike maneuver. When you do this maneuver, patient come out with a nystagmus, which will indicate positive positional testing. Then other investigations such as radiological, X-rays, CT scan and MRI. This is CT of a acoustic neuroma, which present with tinnitus, deafness and vertigo. Another condition presenting with vertigo is the labyrinthitis. As I said earlier, infection of the labyrinth, where you can see the MRI showed the edema or the swelling of the labyrinth. The other investigations include hematological, full blood count, thyroid function test, blood sugar and electrolyte. Now, coming to the important part of the lecture is, in the general practice, how do we diagnose? What is the clinical approach of vertigo in the general practice? I think best way is, if you have a patient with vertigo, see whether the patient has a deafness or not. On that, we divide into three: vertigo with deafness, vertigo with no deafness, vertigo with other CNS features such as severe vomiting, headache and paralysis, numbness. So on that, this is the easy way where you get a proper diagnosis in the general practice. Vertigo with deafness. There are only very few conditions. Infection, labyrinthitis and meningitis. They all have vertigo and deafness. Then vascular situations such as Meniere's syndrome. They all have vertigo, also has deafness. Tumors, CP angle, acoustic neuroma, they all have vertigo and deafness. And trauma, following head injury, there is leak of perilimb. They all have vertigo and deafness. And ototoxic drug can cause it vertigo as well as deafness. So it's easy to know when a patient presenting with vertigo, ask them whether there is deafness. So it could be one of these. Then there's another category, vertigo with no deafness. It's commonest is the positional vertigo. We commonly see this is most common vertigo in the practice. But elderly patient with vertigo with no deafness. And also there is another condition, vestibular neuritis, following the upper respiratory tract infection. Vertigo with no deafness. And cervical vertigo due to spondylosis can cause vertigo but no deafness. Hypothyroidism can cause vertigo, no deafness. So it's very easy. First question you should ask is whether there is a vertigo. In addition to vertigo, there is a deafness. Then patient with vertigo plus other neurological features such as paralysis, loss of consciousness, convulsions, severe headache and vomiting, numbness, neck stiffness. So that comes into a different category which is easy to identify. So, in other words, the vertigo can be peripheral due to the ear problem or due to the central nervous system. If it is sudden vertigo, could be peripheral. If it is slow and gradual, could be central. If it is positional, if the position aggravates the situation, that's peripheral. There is no positional element in the central vertigo. The intensity is severe in the peripheral vertigo or labyrinthine vertigo, ill-defined in the central. Nausea is frequent in vertigo with ear condition, infrequent with vertigo with central nervous system. Nystagmus is horizontal, nystagmus is vertical in central vertigo. Hearing loss is present in peripheral, absent in central. Duration is, episodic, whereas central vertigo is constant. So CNS signs are absent in peripheral, usually present in central. So this broadly divide. If you have a patient with vertigo having long period of duration and without any positional element, it could be central rather than peripheral. So this gives an idea whether it is anything to with the central nervous system lesion causing or the peripheral lesion. So principles of treatment of vertigo. There are a few important things. You have to treat the cause. It could be infection, it could be tumor, so treating the cause. So again, at the same time, you have to suppress the vestibular system because patient is presenting with severe vertigo, and suppress the emotional. Patient get really stressed up and emotional, so you have to look after that part also. And while waiting for compensation, sometimes you have to accept the problem. There are situations where there is deafness, whether patient like or not, you have to accept it. And finally, there are intractable vertigo, there are surgical help, and also vestibular rehabilitation. So medical treatment of vertigo, which is very important in the general practice. I think not only the general practice, even in the hospital. Symptomatic treatment. Symptomatic treatment involves pharmacotherapy, that is giving drugs. Specific therapy, that also includes certain pharmacological therapies and intratympanic injections of various drugs and dietary changes and certain maneuvers. Those are depending on the condition. Then finally vestibular rehabilitation. There are rehabilitation methods. Eye movement, head movement can help vestibular rehabilitation. So, what sort of drug we use in the symptomatic treatment of vertigo? Antiemetic, anti-inflammatory, anti-menias, anti-migrainous, antidepressant, anticonvulsant. Those are the drugs used in treating symptomatically patient with vertigo. Then vestibular rehabilitation, promoting vestibular compensation. Patient get adapted to the vertigo. Habituation may have initial exacerbation, but finally get adaptation. So how do we advise a patient, a DC patient? This is very important as a general practitioner. How do you advise it? Positive reassurance is very important. The patient who has felt dizziness in the first time in his life really get frightened because he might think that I am going to die. So positive reassurance is very important part of the treatment. So can advise on certain food factors. There are certain food factors which can precipitate. So advise on the food factors, advise on the bodily movement, looking up and down, turning left and right, and head movement can cause it. So advise on bodily movement, advise on bathing habit, avoidance of the cold water bath. Even there are certain other things such as meditation, vestibular exercises and vestibular aids. Common vertigo in general practice. Commonest is the benign positional paroxysmal vertigo. As I said earlier, vestibular neuronitis, migraine, Meniere syndrome and central vertigo. Those are the very common conditions we see in the private sector. Just to go through a little bit of common condition, vestibular neuronitis, usually following upper respiratory tract, patient feel dizzy. Severe incapacitating vertigo takes about few days and settle down with anti-inflammatory drugs, and usually following viral infection. It's spontaneous, complete recovery with supportive treatment. Treatment aimed at stopping inflammation, and steroids are commonly used, and within 24 hours they recover. That is called vestibular neuronitis. This comes under vertigo with no deafness. Meniere syndrome, it's a classical condition with vertigo, tinnitus and the deafness. At the time of vertigo, tinnitus increases, deafness deepens. So you don't miss it. Usually patient initial symptom is tinnitus. Gradually tinnitus increases. At the time of peak, the vertigo appears, dizziness appears and the deafness deepens. It's an episodic attack. Usually with the time vertigo settles down, deafness disappears and tinnitus disappears. So that's a triad of symptom: vertigo, tinnitus and deafness. In Meniere syndrome, widely accepted medical treatment include dietary salt restriction. Diuretic can be given. There are so many medication, vasodilators, immunosuppressive, and even intratympanic injections of aminoglycoside and steroids are considered. The migraine, another common condition seen in young people with vertigo and headaches. Usually following headache, they come out with vertigo, and diagnostic criteria are as given here: family history, motion intolerance and vestibular symptoms. Treatment, as in migraine, modifying the risk factors, exercise and diet, avoidance of various food factors, and there are various medications given. Prophylactically, we all know that, migraine therapy. So these are the things which are being used in the treatment of migrainous vertigo. Benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, the most common cause, usually seen in elderly after about 40-45. Everybody one day feel it, and as a result of dysfunctioning posterior semicircular canal. And here what happened? There is some calcium deposition in posterior semicircular canal, and also some imbalance of chemistry in the semicircular canal. So here what happened? Characteristically, they present with feeling vertigo, looking up and down, turning left and right, and lasting for a few seconds. And the treatment is, there is so many, as I said earlier, medical therapy and also repositioning of the otoconia. So that is habituation exercises. Those are the things which can be used in the position of vertigo. So I'll just describe certain maneuvers done in patient with vertigo. There is famous, well-known Epley maneuver. Here what happened? Here the canal positioning of maneuver, it has about 5 steps where we move the otolith back into the posterior semicircular canal. Here it has 5 steps, like in Hall-Pike maneuver, what I described earlier. You bring the head down, turn the head 90 degrees to the other direction. Patient roll onto the shoulder, rotate the head and look down toward the floor. And that is called Epley maneuver. So there are contraindications for Epley maneuver also, but in the hospital we can do it, though I don't know whether it's possible to do in the private sector, in a general practitioner, because not everybody can tolerate it. There are contraindications also. Unstable heart diseases, high-grade carotid stenosis, severe neck diseases are contraindicated. So it has limitations. So Epley maneuver can be done in the hospital. Then there are other maneuver, Brandit and Daroff maneuver. That's again, here what happens, you move the head toward the provoking position repeatedly. That patient finally develop habituation to that help to get rid of vertigo. That's called Brandit maneuver. Then there are other maneuvers, similar maneuvers done in the positional vertigo. So that's about the vertigo in adults. Again, vertigo can be experienced in children. Vertigo in children, something very difficult to understand because it's frequently overlooked, because inability to explain. And there may be concurrent systemic diseases which masking the vertigo. So difficult to understand symptoms. Child behave like being hurt. So sometimes the mother identify the nystagmus. So that nystagmus alert the parent. Vertigo in children. So it could be again physiological or pathological. Physiological vertigo is usually seen in as a motion sickness is the commonest. And there are other conditions, visual vertigo, auditory vertigo, head extension vertigo. Those are all physiological conditions compared to pathological condition, which can be again with vertigo with ear diseases, vertigo with no ear diseases, like I described earlier. So that is vertigo in children. Vertigo with ear diseases can be due to wax, otitis media, glue ear, ototoxic drug, labyrinthitis, that is infection in the inner ear, and the trauma. Vertigo with no diseases, no ear diseases, can be positional vertigo, commonly migrainous, and hyperventilation, dental vertigo, and hypothyroidism can cause vertigo with no ear diseases. That's again slightly different from the vertigo in adult. That's all about vertigo.